we are about to begin our project number 7. And I know I say this quite often, but this time it's going to get a little bit more difficult because we are actually going to create a game. And I hope you know rock, paper, scissors. It's a very popular game, especially amongst kids, or when you have to very quickly decide on who's gonna do the worst chore or something like this. So very quickly to resolve any sort of issues, and it's a totally random choice. So basically everyone's got a chance to win, especially with the computer because there's no strategy, so it's pure luck. Anyway, we have 3 images on the web page, and all representing a choice. So we've got rock, paper, scissors. Rock can destroy scissors, so it's gonna win with scissors. It's gonna lose to paper because paper is gonna wrap the rock, and paper is gonna be cut by scissors, so scissors win in this conflict. I've got a button play. Now I'm gonna select my option rock, let's play, and at the end we have like a summary. So this is a summary for this particular game, and the board is the summary of all games played. The year I chose was rock, computers chose paper, and unfortunately the computer won this time. If I'm gonna play again, computer won again. Okay, cool. I've won now. We've got number of games played, 3. I've won once, I've lost twice. If we have a look at the index.html file, it's slightly longer than normally. But I'm not going to take you through all the CSS because this is a course for JS after all. You can, if you want to, you can analyze it later on. What I'm going to take you through is the body tag. So basically we have that h1 is on here on top, and a div with one header says please select, and our 3 options as images. So I've got 3 images, and you can see that the source, all title, these are like built-in attributes that they're there ready for you to use. And we also have something called data that we can like customize. So this is my custom-made attribute called data option, because later on when we're gonna need it for our functions, when we have to select a particular image, okay, we could work on classes or IDs, but real JS lovers say that classes and IDs are there to work for CSS. So they're for styling mainly and not to work with JS. And so I thought this is a good place to introduce as data something attribute, and good place to start. So as you can see, the value says exactly what they are. So we've got rock, paper, and scissors. Later on, we have a button. It's just one button on the web page, and it's got a class of start, because it's good practice to always have some description for your elements. And then our panel on the left and panel on the right hand side. Cool. So basically game score, your choice. Again, we're using customized attributes of data summary this time. And go your choice. AI stands for artificial intelligence, so this is a computer's choice. And got data summary for who wins, as leave who win. And you can see that this pan is currently empty, so all this data is going to be injected by our functions that we are going to write for the game. And panel on the right, again, so for now they all holding value of 0, but it's gonna change as it's changing as we play along. So the more data is added. Cool. This is it. This is all I wanted to show you. And yeah, let's begin. Okay, so let's play. This game is like super simple on the surface, but it's not that simple underneath. So it does require some steps or some process to think through those steps and to have, like, I'm sure we or you can change some things along the way, but at least it requires a general direction so that you know what you're gonna do more or less at this point. And I say you have to know, but I mean I have to know so that I will take you through those steps, because so far mostly we've done projects where it didn't incorporate too many elements, especially depending on each other. And so here it's gonna get like this, we're gonna get to this level up. Right, so many different ways to start, many different ways to make the same thing with the same outcome, the same result. But I felt we are approaching the topic of object-oriented programming, so maybe let's get used to objects. And also it makes sense to make it like using objects to group those elements, at least at the beginning, because it's going to be much easier to read. It's going to be much more transparent this way. I'm going to start with like the creating the object for the board. Basically, I'm going to create a const. I'm going to call it game summary. Here, assignment and curly braces. In curly braces, we are going to put our properties, which are taking the form of a key value, if you remember. And we'll go one by one. So good. Numbers for the number of games played. And here, we no longer use an assignment operator, but a colon. And we are going to set it to 0. Again, we're not finishing with a semicolon, but a comma. We've got numbers. We've got wins. Again, set it to 0 at the beginning. Got losses, 0, and draws. The last one can take comma, but it doesn't have to. So some people do like this, some people leave a comma, some people don't. Many schools claiming other things. I'm not gonna leave a comma at the end because that's how I've learned. And if you remember, if you want to get inside an object, you just type game summary. Then by a dot, you can access any of the properties so you can see everything is available. And if you wanted to get to numbers, that would be the way to do it. We could also store it in like variables with the keyword let, because they will be always updated. I don't know, game numbers, number of games. Anyway, this time we are going to use objects. Remember, objects have like isolated scopes for the properties, and it's also going to be useful for us because it's not going to get in conflict with any other data in the global scope. Right, the other object I was thinking to create is this game score from here. And it's going to incorporate or going to consist of my choice and the computer's choice. So let's do a const. We're going to call it game. And we are going to call the first property or the key player hand. That's going to be us. And let's set it to, we could do a null. I'm going to get an empty string because at the beginning, this is the final project. So when I didn't select anything and I wanted to play, I have this pick your hand pop-up window because in the final project, I'm already storing this value, so this receives the value of whatever has been clicked on. So if nothing has been clicked, it remains an empty string. Cool. Let's do this. And the artificial intelligence choice, meaning his or her or its hand, computer's hand, and also set it to an empty string. And as the most logical, I would say, just thinking how you play this game, is that you know that you have to pick an image, and to do so in this game, you have to click on the image. So we know for a fact that we have to store those images someplace. So to be able to set that addEventListener and listen for a click when it occurs, and we then will work from there. But for now, we definitely know that we need to store those images somewhere. So since these are hands, I'm going to create a constant call it hands and get there by document a query selector all, because we have more than one image, and I could just place image because we only have those 3 images on our web page. But in case our project was growing and this game was evolving, then we might want to use a class. So we have the div that's isolating all our images, and it has a class of select. So let's use it. Gonna do dot select and all images in the class select. Save it, and let's check if it's storing the correct data. Okay, we've got a node list consisting of 3 images. So far, so good. We have everything. And thinking ahead, we might not need it, but we might need it to be an array, because for now, a node list is just a pseudo array. And I know we are not going to need it, but because normally it's always better to have more options, we could use a rest parameter, split all those elements and place them in an array. And I think this is still optimal solution. Just want all of this to fit in one line. Okay, cool. Right, so we now are storing our hand in a separate isolated variable, and we know that we need to set an addEventListener on those images. So for, normally do a hand add, you can see that there is no hint. Then you usually get a hint of possible actions from Visual Studio Code, and we're not getting this addEventListener. It's because we cannot add event listener on all those elements all at once. We have to split them, or get there and add an event listener on every individual element. And to do that, we are going to do a for each, because it's neat and easy to read. So we've got in hand, we could either put an image. I'm going to stick to a hand because it's more memorable. Got a hand, and then in every single hand, we want to add an event listener. So here I already have that hint. You can see that Visual Studio Code is helping me. I'm adding an addEventListener, attaching the method. We are listening for a click. That's for certain. And the second thing, what is supposed to happen when the click occurs? So we want to select a hand. This is not written just yet, well, we can name our function hand selection, because we know that's what's supposed to happen when we click on that particular image that we pick. Cool. And now that we've created, or we passed the reference to a function here, we actually need to create our function. If we wanted to use a function declaration, we could do it underneath, but this is not good practice, so we won't do it, even though it would be hoisted and not throwing errors. Let's do it on the top. I normally use arrow function and then function expression, so I'm assigning the body of the function to a const. But this time I've decided to go back to a traditional keyword function, just so we're gonna get used to it. Okay, so I've got function hand selection. No, that's not what I wanted to copy. I want to copy this hand selection, paste it here, open braces, open curly braces for the function body, and I want to console log this. Our object-oriented programming is gonna start very, very soon, so we need to get really comfortable using the keyword this. And I'm gonna console log this. So I'm gonna click, and every time I'm gonna click on a different image, we can see that information, what exactly has been clicked, right? So we have that every image has a click event that we're listening for, and this will show what we are currently working on. And we are working on hands, on every individual hand. So this context of this comes from here, from hands. And that's where it's pointing. Just as a reminder, because we briefly mentioned it before, but if we used, instead of this function declaration with the function keyword, we would go with a const hand selection, and it decided to use an arrow function. This context of this wouldn't be pointing at the same thing. So I'm gonna click again, and you can see that the context of this here, in this case, when we are using fat arrow function, is inherited from global context, from the context that is above. And we no longer can use this as the same thing as before. So if we wanted, just gonna copy this and paste it here. If we wanted to make a reference to an image, we would have to use our traditional, or something that we've already worked with, target. And this way I'm gonna save it and then click on the element. You can see that target is now pointing at every specific individual element, whereas this, when we use an arrow function, is pointing at the context from above. So it's inheriting its context. There's also a thing called current target, and I'm sure you will see it being used quite often, so that's why I'm mentioning it, and it's doing exactly the same. Oh, it's undefined. Oh, it's because it's current target, it's not current target. Cool. It's supposed to do the same thing as the target. The current target is pointing at an image. Cool. But I'm just sharing this as a curiosity. We are not going to be using it I'm going to comment this out. This time, I'm going to use a function. Declaration, hand selection, and again, console log this, and back to normal. Let's click, everything works, pointing at the right context of this, the one that we actually wanted to see. And what's next? So we have this, we have knowledge of that. When we click on an image, we want to be able to select a hand and to store the right element, because we have 3 of them, and depending on which one we're using, we want to store either the rock or paper or scissors in our variable. And so this is no coincidence that we use this data option here, and we have one for each of the elements. So we've got an option for rock, paper, and a separate option for scissors. And as I said, we could go with a class, but it's supposed to be used for CSS, and ID is supposed to be used to search for elements. So data option is just perfect for our use. Console like this. I'm gonna create a game player hand. We are getting inside here, inside that object, into this property of a player hand, because this is where we want to store our selection. And so we know that this is where we want to store the value, and the way to do it is to use keyword this, because it's pointing at every particular image. So we can do this and then access our data set and option, and let's see if this is gonna work. In order to do that, we're gonna console log the value of game player hand, and console log place underneath. Cool. So now it's supposed to print out the value of whatever is being stored in the game player hand on every click. You can see I clicked on the rock, and we are getting the value of the data option. So far everything works exactly as we wanted, which is perfect. So we know whatever we selected, but we needed that frame around our selection. And I've decided to go with a box shadow because it doesn't cause any problems with like additional margins and setting in, and depending on the box sizing properties in CSS. So this is the most accurate for us, at least. So again, we are making the reference to this because every this has a context of every individual image. I've got this, whatever is going to be clicked on is going to be substituted under the word this. We've got this style and a box shadow, again camel case for my multiple words, and it takes five values inside here. The first one is being how much you want to move an object on to the right. The second one is taking the y-axis, so moving upwards or downwards. The third one is if you want to have it blurred, and the fourth one that we are interested in is the thickness, so 4 pixels, and the color, we're gonna go with red. You can go with any other color that you like. Just wanted to have it a very distinct color here. Cool, so we have that. Let's check if it works. I'm gonna click, got paper, rock, scissors. So I've got the right console log, and unfortunately, one thing that is kind of like abandoned is that we only want to select one thing, and as you will see, if I'm gonna try to print out this, the value of what is being stored in game player hand, you can see that is the exact last selection. So whatever I clicked last, I clicked on scissors. We can see that this is the one that has been console locked as the last value, and it's also being stored now in the game player hand. However, the framing here remains on all of them because this is something separate. Unless we're not being totally explicit and specific and just clear enough, the program won't know what we intended. It has to be a line for it. So basically, what we want to happen is that when we click on a, let's say on the paper hand, we want right before that to reset the box shadow to its original. So we click on the, refresh. We want to click on the scissors, but right before, and now when I decided we play the game, I want to be able to make my fresh start. So when I decided to change my mind and now press on a rock, right before that, I want to reset the box shadow on all elements. It's gonna happen very quickly, so we won't see it. It's just gonna mark the one that I've clicked on. So again, to do that, we need our hands and for each. And inside there, we're gonna work on every image. And we want that hand style box shadow set to nothing. So it's an empty string and it doesn't hold any value. We can't use this inside here because we are no longer, we are working on the hands, we are working on an image, but this is like separate thing. So this is supposed to happen in this function here called hand selection, but it's no longer in the same context. So even though it's the same thing, we cannot use the keyword this. We have to work on every individual element, and then for each of those elements, we want to set the styling of box shadow to nothing. To nothing on the click, and right after that, on the one we've clicked, is going to be marked with red. It's just going to happen so quick, so all of them will be reset for just this fraction of a second, and then the one we're going to click on is going to become red. Right, so now I'm taking rock, and I've got rock. I'm going to go with scissors, and the box shadow goes to scissors only. Cool. So that's exactly the effect we wanted for and we went after. And this is pretty much it for this first part. And I think the best way is to split it into separate chunks so that you can take a moment here and analyze it, what happened if you would do some things differently. Then have a moment here, and I'll see you at the next bit. We're exactly where we left off, so you just need to pick up right there. And so far, we've handled the first step of us selecting a specific image and this is handled by a function handSelection. Here, when we make our pick, there is going to be a red frame around the selected image, and the next thing we'll have to do, the next natural step in the game would be to hit the button Let's Play. If we do it now, nothing is going to happen because this is us being responsible for handling the logic of the game. So if you ever feel like you're stressed out or like totally confused because you don't know what to do next in your application or in your game or your program, do what I do. Imagine that you're a user, you're on the other side, you're not responsible for writing the game, you only want to play the game or use the program, and most of the time you will have no problem thinking of what you expect from the application, and then just switch and set it onto like your other mindset as a developer, because it's kind of scary that you have to write the logic for something, but it's not so scary when you are the user and you kind of have your expectations. So it's just much easier if you learn to switch the sides. So basically, now we need to listen for a click happening on the Let's Play button. And because we're only going to use it once in this application, I don't see the reason to store it in a separate variable. I'm just going to take it directly from a document. A query selector. Here I know that I've created a class called Start. If you want to double check, it's right here, a button with the class of Start. And we are going to do addEventListener method. We are going to listen for a click, which we're going to pass as the first parameter. And as the second parameter, we need a function. And I'm going to put a start game function, which doesn't exist just yet, but we're going to write it in a second. Our start game function is a very responsible function. It's the most responsible function in the entire program, because this function is going to consist of the kind of like smaller functions, and the smaller functions are going to be responsible for only one task, whereas the start game function is going to be responsible for the entire game. So all the steps, the entire process. And the first step being, if I'm going to go back here to the game, this is the original one, the completed project, and I do not make any selection, I'm just going to hit the Let's Play button. You can see that there's this pop-up window. It says pick your hand, and one of the things that the hand selection here is doing, whenever we pick our hand, or when the user picks their hand, this value here is being updated every single time. So if I'm going to copy this game player hand and make my pick, I'm picking paper. This paper is coming from the console log on the line 22. I also want to copy paste my game player hand. You can see this is a string. So this paper as a string is now taking the place of an empty string from here. And so basically we need to make sure that we have our system preventing the game from this happening. So if the program will ever see that the player hand is an empty string, it needs to throw that pop-up window to the screen. Cool. So this is the first job of the start game function. I'm gonna put if in game player hand equals an empty string. Then we want the alert to be shown on the screen. Pick your hand. Save it. Now I'm not gonna make a pick. I'm gonna hit the let's play button and we have our pop-up window showing. But there's also one more thing that I want to show you, because if this happens, we want the program to stop and not actually stopping, which the console log will show you. And again, I'm not making any pick. This is updating. I don't know why so long, but okay. Let's save it. Let's give it some more time. Cool. I'm gonna hit the let's play button. We have the pick your hand alert showing on the window. But there's also our console log message also showing, which is shouldn't, because we wanted the program to stop right there. In order for the program to stop where we want it to stop, we need to add a return keyword. If we do that, it signifies that in case this condition is true, after return, it's supposed to stop. It's going to execute whatever is on the right hand side, and after that, no more. So again, presentation. I'm not picking any image. I'm hitting let's play button. We have our pop-up window showing in the browser, but there's no log in the console. So the line 30 was not executed. And this is exactly what we wanted. So I'm going to remove this. Just as a curiosity, I'll show that we don't actually need those curly braces. If we have a one-liner like this, we can just have it on one line altogether. I'm going to make it slightly bigger to show you that this is one line. And it also looks very pretty. We don't need an empty string here because this is like as if we wanted to evaluate to false. So in case this is, we're going to negate this and it should also work the same. Okay, now we're going to make a selection and we've got our pop-up window because we put this negation exclamation mark is a negation. So instead of evaluating to something or an empty string, we just overturned or negated its value, so it's now evaluated to false. If it's false, an empty string, then we'll return an alert. Just for the better readability of the code, I am going to make it into a 3-liner. With the curly braces. Because I think it's just easier on the eyes to have it this way. Go. So we have now our system preventing us from whenever the player doesn't pick a hand, either on purpose or because you didn't know how to play the game. So the next step is to actually, we can make our choice, then we hit the let's play button, and we need for the computer to also make their choice. And it has to be as righteous as possible, meaning that it has to be a random choice. Here in our start game function that is responsible for many other things, we're gonna put a game artificial intelligence hand. So it is what is the computer gonna choose the value of the computer's choice, player hand and the artificial intelligence hand. Here on the other side, instead of writing the body of the function, we're actually gonna just execute the function that is gonna be called artificial intelligence choice. And it's gonna return something. And we know, or we should know, or if we didn't know, we're gonna learn that whatever a function returns, this value is gonna be assigned by the assignment operator to whatever is on the left-hand side. So the result of this function is gonna be assigned as a value to our game artificial intelligence hand. So what's left for us to do is to write our function. And for now, we're just gonna do hard-coded paper. You can see that this is like the chain of reaction. So basically, we make our choice, we hit the button, let's play. This click triggers the start game function, and here, as a result, we trigger artificial intelligence choice function, which in turn will return paper. So this value of our computer's choice should be now hard-coded paper. And this is paper now. So instead of paper, we need an actual function picking the value. Since we are making our pick out of those 3 images, it is only right for the computer to also make their pick out of those 3 images. As a reminder, we are storing all those 3 images under the variable of hands. And we are storing it as an array. We know that elements in an array are always going to have an index. So basically the rock is under index 0, paper under index 1, and scissors have index 2. So we need to make a selection out of 0, 1, or 2. So we are going to make a const artificial intelligence hand. In here, since it's a random choice, it would suggest that we're going to use a Math.random method times 3, because we know we need index 0, 1, or 2, and if we do it this way, it's going to go for the numbers between 0 up to 2.99999, and because we don't need a fraction, we're going to wrap it in another pair of parentheses, and we're going to do a math floor on it. The next step would be to wrap it as an index number and use this index to select a specific element from our hands array from here. So basically this should point now at a specific image, and this is working. That's great. If we do paper, rock, scissors, we can see that all 3 images can be selected. The number is totally random. You can go for anything but in the range of 0, 1, and 2. And now we need to get to this specific value of scissors or rock or paper here. So we need to get inside our data option. To do that, as we did before, we need to use a data set and then get inside our custom made option here, and it should now return, instead of always paper, a random choice. So let's copy this and see what is being returned. Got scissors, scissors again, rock, scissors, rock, scissors, once, paper only once. Like, it's pure lag, but not so many times paper. But you never know. There you go. So, to recap, we've covered the hand selection by the user. We've covered a circumstance in case the user didn't select anything and it's still an empty string. And we've covered also the computer's choice. Instead of doing it two ways, we could just do the body of the function as a returned value here instead of the artificial intelligence hand and just remove it altogether. It's just shorter and it should also work the same way. And since we have the user's choice and the computer's choice, we should be able to get to the next stage, which is the result of the game, to cover the panel or the panels.